I tell you, it's good to be here with my local Tea Party family again. We are family. This is now our 4th Tea Party in Frederick over the past year. We've had 4 now. Let's ask ourselves, why are we here? Good answers. Let's park that, and we'll come back to it. If we're to survive as a liberty-loving society, we must get back to the basics and define properly the role of government, which Blaine says so eloquently so much of the time. Brave individuals have warned us for generations that we're headed down the road of self-destruction. This road has many lanes: gross financial mismanagement, social upheaval, a general sense of entitlement, improper functions of government. The list goes on and on and on. But anyone who believes that it's just the government's fault, or it's just Wall Street's fault, or just the union's fault, they're ridiculously uninformed. There is so much blame to go around, it is mind-boggling. Until we address the elephant in the room, we can't even attempt to tackle the other herd of large animals making this mess. We've already attempted to address the problems through our elected officials. I think we all know how that's doing. How's that going for us? There are far too many things that we can't control. But we do have the ability to control our own actions, right? We can control our actions. That's one solution. It is written, as iron sharpens iron, so when one man sharpens another. Today, just like I have in the past, I come before you as a friend, as a family member. And it's important to respectfully chastise your friends when appropriate. Bear with me as I ask you a few tough questions. I'm not asking you to answer out loud. Simply answer to yourself. Over the past year, how often have you read the Constitution? Have you taken time to learn what the founders meant when they penned the document? Do you understand why our founders documented the authority given to the federal government as well as our Bill of Rights? Have you taken time to read the Federalist and the Anti-Federalist papers to understand the debates during our Constitution's ratification? Have you learned about how and when our elected officials began to circumvent our Constitution? Besides coming to these Tea Party rallies, what have you done to advance liberty in the community around you? Have you sacrificed your time, your talents, and your treasures? Thank you. And if not, what is stopping you from doing these things? That's one person, but again, we can control our actions, Frank. This may come across a little bit Chicken Little. You may feel like you've heard it too many times to count. But we're running out of time. Who agrees with me? Are we running out of time? We must act. Let's take an economic example from our economic landscape. There's a sign that says exactly what I'm going to talk about. Our sovereign debt mountain is growing exponentially by the day. Let me illustrate this. To pass 1 million seconds, it takes roughly 11.5 days. 1 million seconds, 11.5 days. To pass 1 billion seconds, it takes over 31 years. To pass 1 trillion, that's with a T, 1 trillion seconds, it takes over 31,600 years. By the end of this fiscal year, our country will be over $14 trillion in debt. Let that sink in. 14 trillion. That's 14 trillion times 31,600 some odd. It's 100% of our annual GDP. That's not even counting the 60 to 80 trillion in unfunded liabilities. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. And that's not even to mention healthcare legislation. Those are the subsidies that are on our doorstep. Are you ready to pay for your neighbor's healthcare? No! I'm not. Even the CBO and the Federal Reserve Chairman, great guy, tell us that it's unsustainable. The U.S. is at significant risk of losing our top bond rating. There's nowhere to go from here except to suppress interest rates continually and to monetize our debt. Anybody familiar with the Weimar Republic? Anybody familiar with Zimbabwe? We can go down to the Frederick coin exchange and grab a $100 trillion Zimbabwe bill. Do you want that here in America? Wheelbarrow full of cash to go buy a loaf of bread? That's where we're headed. We don't have time. We, the citizens, must control the conversation and begin to base our solutions squarely on following the time-tested principles defined within our Constitution. The single most important underlying issue of our time is that we must recognize that our Constitution is a constant document. It's not a moving target to be interpreted through a cultural lens, the then current cultural lens. As Thomas Jefferson stated, on every question of construction, he was speaking of the Constitution, let us carry ourselves back to the time when the Constitution was adopted. Recollect the spirit manifested in the debates, and instead of trying what meaning may be squeezed out of the text or invented against it, sound familiar? Conform to the probable one in which it was passed. This point is vitally important to our freedom, and it must be coupled with actually adhering to the Constitution. It's up to us to hold our elected officials accountable if they deviate from the oath to support and defend the Constitution. Every time, regardless of situation. But when an elected official chooses to not stay principled and instead take a pragmatic approach, do we ever hear that word? A pragmatic approach? It means that he or she, however small, is partaking at the chipping away of our constitutional republic. Not democracy, republic. At the end of the day, our Constitution is what sets us apart from so many other nations that have come and, more importantly, gone. When a politician makes the choice to take part in eroding our most important framework, he or she has positioned themselves on an incredibly slippery slope. They've then compromised themselves where they can no longer take a principled position to fight for our freedoms and our liberties without being tainted by their contradictory votes. For when the government once begins to stretch its power beyond the limits of the Constitution, there is no limit to it and no security for the people. We say that we want limited government, limited and lower taxes, less spending, and a return to the Constitution. But what we have, what have we? What have we as individuals actually done to codify and achieve these goals over the past year? What will we do? What will we sacrifice? How far are we willing to go? Some might say that we don't have the time to debate ideologies or abstract philosophies. My answer to that is that none of the specific issues will matter if we lose our liberty and forget the importance of our founding principles. If this is lost, then we're just fighting for control of the mob. That's not the future that I want for my kids. I don't think you want it for your kids either. This is. For them, I will fight for liberty. Will you join me? Don't tread on us.